feels like the right sort of time to give you an overview. What's it like to live and work in a 6.3 metre panel van? Hello, Greasy. Say hello to your fans. Hello. Right. Quick check of all the buttons. Hello everybody. Well, you join me on my way to a work job for a few days. I'm off towards, call it North Derby to be vague, and I'm in Jazzy. Those familiar with the channel will know that not only am I mental about Jag XK8s, but I really like my camper vans and motorhomes. The most recent transition that we made was from 2 camping vehicles to one I'm driving now. So we had Ruby, our 9090F Rapido A-class motorhome, a relative big rig for UK roads. We really loved it, and amongst the pros and cons of that vehicle was the fact that you were not roughing it. Wherever you went, you were taking your home, and that really was a van that most couples would be reasonably happy to live in. The negative of such a vehicle, whether it was for holidays for myself and Joe, or it was for using it for work trips like this, it's fine for the journey, but not so good for the local explores thereafter because of its size and relative lack of manoeuvrability. You were always a little bit challenged on parking, so we teamed that with a flat tow setup, enabling us to pull our Fiat Abarth behind it. That turned it into a vehicle that ticked all the boxes. You could travel to a campsite and then use a fabulous fun small car to explore from there. And once you got the car on the back, the real negative of flat towing with a car on the ground, is it is, to all practical purposes, impossible to reverse. You can push back for a metre, 2 metres maybe, just as long as the wheels stay reasonably straight, but you can't manoeuvre. Not such a huge issue, in that most people don't reverse that often on the average trip. And if you've got a passenger, they can jump out, and 5 minutes later you can get yourself out of a pickle, one of you drives the car. Travelling alone, not so. I also had Alfie, which was my T5.1 Volkswagen. It was a 2014 vehicle, very smart, a great interior layout for one. It allegedly slept 4, but it was comfortable for 1. Pop top, so you got yourself some headspace. Drove relatively like a car. The size meant that you could park it anywhere. And for me, travelling solo for work, not a lot in the way of downsides, except you definitely need to be camped somewhere with facilities so that you can wash, keep yourself clean, etc. properly. When you're jumping in and out of meetings in various companies each day, you don't want to turn up looking like you've got dressed in the back of a car. However, as a holiday vehicle for myself, Joe and our doggy, that was less than ideal. And obviously many families use vehicles like that and enjoy every minute of it, but we got an A-class motorhome. We're kind of used to a different way of camping, and that was less fun. So we'd got all the bases covered by 2 vehicles plus the Arbath. We came to a decision that why don't we try a change, then the only sensible change we could see, where we could have 1 vehicle to cover most of what that combo could do. And with the exception of snorting down B lanes in the Arbath, we can do practically everything we could do with that combination with our next choice, which was this. So it's a Fiat Ducato. It's a 2014. It's the longest version that you can get. So some people would call it the Maxi, some people would call it the extra long wheelbase. It's 6.3 meters long and 160 horsepower, which is above average but not top of the range for one of these. And I've got a 6-speed manual gearbox. But we'd limited ourselves when looking for this vehicle in, not only we decided on Ducato 6.3 meters long, we'd also decided on the actual conversion. We wanted it to be an IH. We'd seen plenty of IHs, really appreciated the build quality and design in them, and we really wanted one. So now we have a vehicle that we use for our holidays, but I also use for work trips, stay in it, wash in it, eat in it, and then travel to the company the next day in it. And I've now been driving Jazzy for, let's look at the mileage, 31,026, about 6,000 miles. I've spent about 55 nights in her. Myself and Joe have had a couple of weeks away in her. Feels like the right sort of time to give you an overview. What's it like to live and work in a 6.3 meter panel van? Obviously, in most regards, it's far easier and nicer to be driving a car. So I'm not going to compare this to driving a car. That would be pointless. But if you've never driven a reasonably up-to-date van, I would say don't rule it out until you've had a go in one. Hire a van. The size down from a Ducato, whether that be a Transit, a Volkswagen T6, or the latest Renaults, their driving experience is much better than you would anticipate, and really not much of a compromise. The next size up, which this falls into, full-sized van, is a compromise in many ways, but one you might actually enjoy. So compared to driving my Volkswagen T5, what's it like driving this? Well, the first thing to note is it doesn't actually feel bigger. As in, when you're driving down the road, it doesn't feel like you're taking up a lot more space. The width doesn't feel excessive. Ironically, and I'm just talking about my personal experience of my vehicles, the ride quality in Jazzy my Ducato is better than in my T5, but my T5 did have 20-inch wheels on. And most people would say that the Ducatos have rather harsh suspension when they're discussing vans and looking at van reviews, but I think they are more talking about the rear suspension than the front. I think possibly the fact that I've got the long wheelbase, putting the axle as far away as it can possibly be, means that actually the ride comfort in this is very good. There is a little bit more shimmy through the body than you get in a T5, which in turn is more than you get in a car. Just you can feel some of the flex and vibration in the actual shell. It's a very small amount, but if you're tuned to that sort of thing, you'll notice it. The wind noise is very similar. There is more roll though. That is something to be ready for. This is a high top van, but it's the high standard Ducato height, not an extended roof. But you can certainly feel that you've got a little bit more weight upstairs because woodwork, cupboards, skylights, solar panels, all the rest of it. So you've got a lot more roll than you ever would in any T5 or T6. Having said that, I'm pushing through these bends, bang on the speed limit, and it's fun, it's nice. There's quite a sort of predictable amount of roll, that there's no floppiness in it at all. You just feel it load up against the springs, and she drives very nicely indeed. I also think there's quite a lot to be said for having decent tyres on a bigger commercial van. A lot of your T5s and T6s will be running quite road orientated, minibus orientated tyres. Almost all of your Ducato sized vans will be running commercial style tyres, which are all about endurance and not deflecting because they've got very high sidewalls. But if you get really decent tyres, and there are some really good motorhome specific tyres, which I fitted a set as soon as I had the vehicle, I could feel the transformation from okay tyres that came off but aged to brand new and motorhome specific. The driving position in this vehicle is significantly higher than a T5 or T6. I would say at least a foot. So that brings negatives, as we talked about, in terms of handling and access. If you're not as agile as you once were, just try out one of these vans. They have got decent steps, but there's a sort of technique to getting in and out. And if you've never been in one before, the height can take you by surprise, because they're such a common thing to see on the road. You don't really think about how tall the driver's seat is. But that improves your view no end. Seats are exceptionally comfortable. In this van, I would say it's on a par with my T5 for seat comfort, but the T5 had a bench seat for passengers. This has got a really nice captain's seat, so it's better for Joe. The mirrors are double element on both sides and electrically operated on all the elements. So you've got a wide angle view and a flat view. They're big. You can see the back corners of the vehicle. Really good. But I would say that the B pillars are a little far forward, particularly if you have Remis blinds like mine does, which is built-in blinds on the sides, which means when you're at acute junctions, you're trying to enter, maybe you're turning left at a T junction, to look over your shoulder, if that is one where you join it at a shallow angle, can be quite difficult. You've got to really push yourself forward to look around the B pillar, or rely purely on the wide angle element of your mirrors. I haven't found it any worse than T5 for wind catching it on motorways. I would guess ultimately, you know, at the limit, this is going to be more affected by side winds than a T5, but it doesn't feel that way. The gearbox is slick, very easy to use. The ratios are quite well spaced. First, unlike some commercial vehicles, is not tracked to low. The air conditioning is pretty good and effective. The standard head unit that I've got in this van enables me to do everything I need, in that it's got Bluetooth connectivity, it's got a DAB radio, and I can use it as a mobile phone hands-free set. Doesn't have a sat-nav, but I do have a very decent Garmin motorhome specific sat-nav anyway. Parking, I find I can park in any car park for width. There's no issue there. You've just got to find a space where you can overhang a little at the rear, or you can take up 2 spaces. So if you go to the average supermarket, as long as you go to the far end where nobody can be asked to walk from, there's never a problem parking. But any form of parallel park by the side of the road, as long as it's long enough, this really doesn't stick out that much sideways. Small car parks I just avoid. If you had a shorter wheelbase version of this vehicle, I would say that'd be ideal for city car parks. The height means that if there's a height barrier, you just don't go there. Whereas with the T5, I had a little label and I debated with myself whether I could get into the car park. This is about 2.6 metres high, and we have aerials and things on the roof. So if there's a height barrier, just assume you're not going to fit. It's a 3.5 tonne vehicle, so in the UK you don't have to worry about which licence you've got or how old you are. What I've found with this particular vehicle is I forget how big it is quite often. So far that's not given me any particular grief. And I think psychologically the fact that a lot of delivery vans are this van gives you that sense that, hey, they're going to deliver parcels to this place, I'll be fine in this vehicle. I have rear windows so I can see out the back. I also have a really good reversing camera with 2 angles, so I'm not finding reversing difficult. Where I do find a little awkward is sometimes judging swinging backwards into parking bays. I forget the long wheelbase means I have a lot less effect on the position of the rear wheels by screwing the front wheels around. It's a lot slower to turn. Engine noise and wind noise, no different to my T5. Conversion noise currently is a little clattering. It's not bad by motorhome and van conversion standards, driven plenty, but I am a bit poisoned by the fact I spent about 2.5 years eliminating the rattles from our A-Class, and we got damn close to getting it down to nothing. So I was a little bit spoiled by that, so this I find a little annoying. But it's not actually loud, and most of it is items that we've got in the van that I haven't packed correctly. Compared to the A-Class, on a motorway, I would actually rather drive the A-Class. Which is odd because it would definitely be a slower and more wind affected scenario, but the view out of an A-Class is like nothing else. On wide open roads, the A-Class is an absolute joy to drive, and if you've never tried it, hire one or something, it's fabulous. It is like steering your lounge. Also on the A-Class, the front of the vehicle was the bottom edge of the front windscreen, about 3 inches stuck out beyond it. So you have got a better understanding of how far you can drive towards things frontwards than you have in almost any van. And it does have a certain road presence in the A-Class that means people tend to give you a little bit more space, a little bit more respect. Once you're on to the twisty bits, again, an A-Class is a beautiful thing to view out of, but it does become a little more of a technical challenge, keeping yourself from brushing against the foliage and keeping yourself safe and placing it on the road. And more than anything else, it's the level of roll, and that probably applies equally to coach builds, but A-Classes do have the bed that drops down from above your head, which adds some real weight to the front end, as well as bodywork which tends to overhang the wheels. All those things put together means it is quite a rolly experience, and you're certainly not going to push on to the same degree as is in a T5 or a Ducato sized van. On my trip to Wales, I've made the trip many times, and on a journey that would take normally 4 hours in a car, my T5 would typically take me about 4.5 hours. If I took Ruby, and remember I would be also towing the Arbath, then it's going to be taking 5 to 5.5 hours. In this vehicle, it's really no different to the T5. The one area where any standard van has a big advantage over an A-class is the maintenance accessibility. It's really not something you think about until you've got one of these vehicles. But if you're a DIY maintenance guy, then really pop the bonnet on an A-class before you buy it. Recognise that you've got this little slot that you can stare through, and you've got to, for most jobs, do some disassembly of the front grille, or you've got to work from underneath. I'll catch up with you again when I get where I'm going. So here we are. This is a place called Riddingswood. Nice little campsite. Well out of season, obviously. So not the best conditions underfoot, but there's sort of gravel hard standing underneath the soil, so it isn't as bad as it looks. Right, let's set things up, which doesn't take long. I pulled onto a reasonably flat bay. Get the door open. Press the button. Brings our step out. First thing I do, turn it from battery to mains on the fridge, because that'll tell me by stopping beeping, there it goes, that we're on the mains when I hook it up. On the back, and my boot area, all manner of useful things. I've just taken these off, actually. They're the covers for the fridge vents. It's no longer Sub-Zeros. Get my cable out. There we go. Set this over to the socket on the side of the van. Always a good idea. Plug your van in first, then hook up to the mains. That way you've not got live prongs that you're playing with. Keeps the water off, that did. And then there's a very good rule on British campsites and in life in general: don't leave extension leads coiled up. 3 or 4 degrees tonight. I've got this silver screen I'm going to put on the front of the van. That will stop condensation forming. I've also got ramps if I'd have needed them, but I don't think this pitch is uneven enough to warrant them. Yeah, so all tucked up, giving me a bit of thermal insulation, stops condensation on the inside of the window, but yeah, you've got to put it on. When I put it away, obviously try to wrap it up dry, but it's raining, and I just roll it from the opposite side so I know how it goes on, pop it in the boot, and the air in the boot, but I'm pouring it. I know there's nothing that's going to be affected by the wet. And we can see that the fridge has stopped bleeping, so now I'm connected to the mains. Come up here, press the 12-volt button, which allows me to use light switches, etc. And then look back up here, see we're plugged into the mains, charging both batteries. I've got 80% fresh water and 13.1 volts in the cab battery, 14.1 volts in the leisure battery. This is how much gas we've got left in the onboard tanks. And over here I can see that the solar panel is actually delivering. So I'll pop into the back area. This light comes on as soon as you turn on the mains power. It's a touch light. It's the only one in the van that will do it, and it just means that it's safe in terms of walking in. You can see where you're going without bumping into things. Truma controls. I always think these are confusing. I've got the hang of them, but they're certainly not intuitive. The left hand one is the power source. So we're on 1 dash of electricity. I'm going to put it, you've got 2 dashes of electricity, it's twice as many watts. I'm going to put it to gas and electricity to get things going rather quickly. And then around here you've got, do you want 60-degree water, 40-degree water, nothing, heat, or heat and 60-degree water. I'd like some hot water and some heat. So we turn that on. Both light up, and then this tells the thermostat how hot to get. I'm going to turn it up to number 4 to get things moving. That's what does the detecting. Well, here we are, all arrived. Let's set up my interior for a bit of work. And we'll swivel that chair around. Wouldn't normally have the camera mount behind my head, but the other chair too. I tend to store my coat on the back of this one. And over here we have a table that pops up. Charging points over there. The chair is over here. I can pop myself down. And here, if I just pull my seat forward, I've got my main sort of workstation where I can carry on working when I've left the business. But equally, I can use the driver's seat and the little stationette if I want to use this as some sort of worktop for the kitchen. And this is the driver's seat equivalent. Got this sort of quarter table here, which is more than big enough for a laptop and a drink. The only negative of this one is at the moment I don't have any charging sockets. It'd be very easy for me to fit 240-volt outlet, USB outlet, etc. in this area. So yeah, pretty good. So when it comes time to make lunch, plenty of work surface as long as we've got this flap up, but you can't get out that door. You can still get out the driver's door if you swivel the seat, but not very convenient. We've got our big sink and drainer. Having a draining board, actual draining board in a motorhome is quite a deluxe feature. Most don't have them, they just have a sink and a clip-on draining board. That's very nice. And over to the cooker. And it's Thetford triplex, so I've got a separate grill and an oven and a storage cupboard at the bottom. It's all very brilliant. I've got 3 burners and 1 electric hot plate. That is fantastic because, like today, I'm on a site with electric hookup. I can use that as the primary source for cooking and boiling my water, that sort of thing. and I'm not depleting my gas supply. Already paid for electric hookup, so that's good use, and I need the electric hookup for charging. As I have lots of Apple based products, they're quite power hungry. Using a solar cell on the roof, which I have got, an inverter which I don't have, would be possible, but not so easy. So I can make lunch, I can come and sit down here in my lounge, very nice. I've got a very decent TV set, it's got DVD, and it's hooked up to Google Chrome, so I can cast to it. I can use it for Netflix and Amazon Prime and all the sorts of things that I do use. Got plenty of storage areas on these shelves above the seats. Nice lighting from above. It's all very, very pleasant. So how does this compare to living and working in Alfie, the T5? This is wonderful. It's very luxurious. You can manage with Alfie, but this is an absolute treat. How does it compare to living and working out of Ruby, the A-Class? Ruby is that step up in luxury again. There is nothing camper about it. However, I only feel I'm missing out on a couple of things, and they're not big things in the grand scheme of things in terms of living and working in this vehicle on my own. Number one is, in this van I have a wet room, and a very nice wet room it is. It's well appointed, it's more than big enough, it's easy to clean. There's a little lift out carpet that reveals a shower tray, and I have a nice sized drop down sink. Yeah, it's great. There's nothing wrong with this whatsoever. But if you use it as a shower, you know, there's a shower curtain involved, which is never the nicest of things. They stick to you, and you're going to have to clean up a little bit after using it. But, you know, hardly a huge issue if you needed to get yourself a shower in the van. In Ruby the A-Class, it didn't have a wet room. It had a separate toilet room and shower cubicle, which is super deluxe. That was very, very nice. Because I tend to use decent campsites, it's not really a big deal for me. And if I'm away in the van with Joe as a holiday type situation, then it wouldn't be a problem at all, because we're always on nice sites. The other one is, of course, if we were in the A-Class, we would head towards the back to the fixed bedroom with an island bed. How luxurious is that? You just jump into bed whenever you want. It's permanently made up. It is a bedroom. It's amazing. However, this is a much nicer lounge, because in the A-Class you've got a sort of dinette arrangement, whereas in this van I have 3 sofas. It is very comfy. I've got the windows all round, and I've got another seating area up the front. Admittedly, not as many seats at the front, but there are no seats in the back of the A-Class. It's all taken up with that fixed bedroom. So the big two differences don't actually bother me that much. So is this the best van I've ever owned to live and work in? It's a close run thing, but I'm not going to compare it to the T5 or the A-Class. I think to get the best solo work away from home, live away from home van, it would be really tough to choose between this van and Betsy, which was our Auto Sleeper Trophy, based on a VW T4 with a 5-cylinder diesel engine. Why do I say that? The Trophy was much smaller and had very limited storage space in it. However, very comfortable to sit in and lounge around, for one. The bed was very easy to make up, for one. The washroom was, if anything, slightly larger than I've got in here. It had a lot of the same sorts of features in terms of blown air heating, onboard gas, and here's where the balance takes place. That van cost an awful lot less. That van was much smaller and easier to maneuver and to live with from a parking point of view. While I'm not finding this particularly challenging, that was better. And I did actually get a really good solid 40 to the gallon out of that vehicle. But the real deal breaker, I guess, is the age and pace of the T4. The T4 with straight 5 diesel is a great thing to drive, but it is very slow. And by far the slowest of any of the vehicles I've actually used as work vehicles. And I'm not sure I could tolerate it any longer. If you're only using it for holiday trips, then how long it takes you to get where you're going is far less important. But when it's commuting and working, it was very slow. Don't get me wrong, it would easily cruise at motorway speeds, but to get up to those motorway speeds really did take some time. Plus the age of the vehicle meant that getting hold of the parts and servicing and reliability was a little bit more hands-on than in a relatively modern vehicle like a Ducato. All in all, two vehicles stood next to each other. I'm pretty sure I would choose this one to go on my work trips in. Why does this trump them all? Because when we've finished the work trips, we can still use this for holiday trips. And it works for all of that in a way that Betsy the T4 just did not. I had trouble getting the things that I wanted to have in that van stored. Two of us, any sort of distance and time. No good. The storage is very poor in that van.
If you're enjoying our channel, then don't forget to subscribe and click the little bell icon so you get notifications of new videos. And please give us a thumbs up or thumbs down, and you can share the videos. And below the video is always the area where you can comment and get involved with the chat.